And good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. I'm Chad Holmes, along with former Newman Catholic High School boys basketball coach Jeff Gress, starting back at our old time of 6 o'clock because Gress said we need more time. We can't wait for the news. We have to go right on at the top of the hour, so we're going to do it starting at 6 o'clock during the winter sports season. And coming up tonight, we got a couple of special guests. At 6:40, our coach guest for this week from the undefeated 3-0 Merrill High School girls basketball team, Michael DeBuhr. Great start for Merrill. We'll talk about what's working for the Blue Jays with Coach DeBuhr coming up at 6:40. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll be talking from Wausau West, outstanding senior, Vince Hanz. Hanz was the starting quarterback for the Warriors in their Valley Football Association championship season, and now he's right back at it, part of the Wausau West boys basketball team that tips off their season on Friday night. So Vince Hanz at 7, Michael DeBuhr coming up at 6:40 here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And Jeff, during the course of the show as well, we will later on in the program let you put on your hockey hat to preview the boys and girls hockey season in the second hour. And we'll also be talking here in the first hour about what we've seen so far in basketball. We'll talk in segment number 2 about the girls, but we'll start off with the boys basketball as actually the season got underway last night with some action. So it is that time where everything is starting to roll in winter high school sports.
Yeah, that's why you got to love the Thanksgiving holiday. Everything just this show right before Thanksgiving that we have a lot of action, a lot of tournaments coming up. Everybody's getting into their game schedules, and it just kind of gives you a better feel for what's going on in our local area for high school sports.
Well, let's jump into boys high school basketball. We've had some action around the area last night, but also a lot of action coming up this weekend. The holiday weekend featuring some tournaments and an opportunity to see what teams have early on in the campaign. Let's start off with the Wisconsin Valley Conference. Last night, the Marshfield Tigers tipped off their season rolling up in Rhinelander 69-38. Luke Lemoyne, 16 points. Brooks Hinson, 10 for Marshfield. That's a good win for Marshfield to start things off. I saw Rhinelander scrimmage Wausau West last week. I think Coach Lemons always will have a solid group for Rhinelander. Marshfield, one of the teams expected to try and challenge DC Everest in the Valley, and that's a really good win for a Marshfield squad that always seems to have pretty good expectations.
Well, and I think it bolsters some carryover from the season they had a year ago when they, were 12-0 in the conference, first place in the Valley. And to lose 4 starters, build it back up. They were going to rely on Hinson quite a bit to be their leading scorer and kind of their point guy. And beating Rhinelander by with that amount of points kind of shows a little statement early on and drives that confidence you want as a coach, especially coming from a Rhinelander who's always going to play no matter what their talent pool is. They're going to play you scrappy, and they're going to come at you because Coach Lemons up there has them ready for their games, and they try to become and always be competitive.
And for the Valley, it is going to be a very active weekend, a chance really to see what some of these squads have. We got Wausau West hosting their turkey shoot at the West Field House, facing Stanley Boyd on Friday, and then either Newman Catholic or Northern Pines on Saturday. DC Everest playing in a good event over at Oshkosh North. Take on Kingdom Prep Lutheran on Friday, and then Oshkosh North on Saturday. Wausau East is hosting a tournament over at East High this weekend, facing McDonald on Friday, and always an interesting early season matchup, hosting Mosinee on Saturday. We'll talk about the other teams, but just basically the Wausau area teams, East, West, and Everest, all playing Friday and Saturday, and also a real chance to get a good rhythm playing back-to-back games.
Well, right. And again, you get to showcase a little bit what you had. Newman's got a strong senior class returning and see if they can start hitting into action real quickly. West coming into it, they're going to play their scrappy defense, get the scoring punch where they need to get it from to play within the teams that they're going to play against. East, transition a little bit from the size they had last year to the guard play that they're going to have this year, and getting a good, like you said, early matchup with Mosinee there, and then DC Everest, who's going to, obviously Marcus Hall's a huge part of that team and a player that people watch, and to see what the supporting cast will do for Everest to make a difference in their basketball games.
And then even next Tuesday, those teams have non-conference games. Everest goes to Eau Claire Memorial, which has been a really good Big Rivers conference opponent. Wausau West will take on a Big Rivers team, Eau Claire North, at the Fieldhouse Tuesday. And Wausau East will face New London on Tuesday. So, again, something we're going to talk about a little bit later on is scheduling, but these schools, boy, they get right into it here after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I have always, it was different for when I coached at Newman and things like that. We'd play a tournament, and then you'd hop into conference play so quick. And the Valley does it a lot differently, where, they're playing in these Thanksgiving tournaments, and I think that's a good thing to get into and kind of see strengths and weaknesses and what your team wants to create as their identity and who they are early on, and then they bounce back and still test themselves before every conference is a war. You ask any coach within their own conference, and it's the best conference in the state, and they're playing hard against each other all the time, and you get a matchup in a game every night. So I think the Valley has a good idea in the way that they get some of these tougher non-conference games in there before they start sparring with each other.
Another Valley team that plays both Friday and Saturday is Wisconsin Rapids. They'll be down at the Just a Game Fieldhouse near the Dells. Dan Witter, usually the veteran when he gets on the sidelines, but on Friday, he won't be the veteran. He'll be the young buck facing the coaching legend, Jerry Pettigrew, as Rapids takes on Cuba City on Friday, and then Rapids has another game at the Just a Game Fieldhouse Saturday against Ellsworth. Obviously, you played for Coach Witter. Any idea what Rapids has this year?
Well, I know one of the things that Coach Witter always did, and you can see it happening again, is go out and test yourself. Right away. We'll play basketball whenever it's possible, whenever it's available, and we're gonna schedule over the holidays, and it's basketball when it's basketball season. And so you can see him going at it again there to get a good test right away for his team early on. I think Jungworth is the big target they have with the big guy in the middle. That's going to be the guy that they look for most of the time. But I know Coach Witter is going to be excited to get out and test himself early on in those games against those two teams.
And Stevens Point has an interesting matchup against Bayport. Bayport seems to be good in all their sports these days. And Spash will be playing a solo game on Saturday at home against Bayport. And then they play Neenah on the road on Tuesday. When you face those teams from the Fox Valley, those are always great tests in the non-conference as well.
And for a number of reasons, as we've seen, a lot of times there's seeding implications. You're already starting to stack your deck for good positive attributes you want to have when the playoff season rolls around, and Spash is testing themselves with those two non-conference games because the Fox Valley is give headaches over to the Wisconsin Valley a lot of years.
And Marshfield's off until Tuesday. They after their win against Rhinelander last night, next Tuesday, they'll host Appleton East, and I'm not sure if Appleton East is at the level they were last year, but that was an extremely good basketball team a year ago. Again, not really certain if they're going to have that same kind of level, but that's, again, a really good non-conference game for Marshfield.
Well, even if we've seen when the Valley, our Wisconsin Valley teams are tested in the playoffs, it's coming out of anywhere. It could be the top team in that conference over in the Fox Valley. It can be a middle-of-the-pack team. They're coming over here with an intensity in their play that they're going to wreak havoc on whoever shows up on a court with them. So I think for Marshfield to go to that side of the state and test them, and to test themselves early on again to try to get a W to, like we talked about, build that confidence within your team early on is a big deal.
Great Northern Conference on the boys' side. A couple of games last night. Northern Pines beat Three Lakes 77-35, and Lakeland fell to Shawano 73-52. And something you said off the air that, Pines has Newman coming up on Friday, and then they either have Wausau West or Stanley Boyd Saturday. Of those teams, they're the one that plays on Tuesday. And you think that's going to be an advantage for them this weekend?
Well, as biased as my opinion is in Newman and as big a backer I am for those guys because I taught them and coached them and I worked there.
Don't need a disclaimer.
Well, I got to throw it out there. I mean, I always found as a head coach, you like to match as best you can the other teams that you're going to play for, match their schedule. So if they get a game in, you get a game in. If they got 2 games in, you're going to try to have 2 games in. It was hard coming in cold turkey without only coming off a scrimmage without that game vibe. So I think that sometimes gives the other team a little advantage if they've played a game ahead of you because they're already used to the officials a little bit. They're used to that type of atmosphere that's hard to recreate. You don't recreate that in a scrimmage or practice. You just don't. So sometimes it can get an advantage. Now, again, these two teams are pretty equally matched, so it should be a war, and that was going to be a fun one to see.
Looking again at some of the GNC teams this weekend, Mosinee, as we mentioned, they see Wausau East on Saturday. They see New London on Friday. It's a great tournament for Mosinee because not a very long trip to come to Wausau and face a couple of large school opponents.
Well, and again, for Mosinee, is as much as they've done winning that great Northern Conference, they're a little bit of a different team. They have some new faces that stepped up. They have some guys that have graduated. Again, Stoffel's still there, so it'll be a team that
they're going to be good, though. I mean, we got Stoffel and Jerschley just as a baseline. You get some guys around them, they're going to be a very dangerous team.
Oh, right, yeah, and so it's going to be interesting to see. Again, I always look at the supporting cast with some of these teams because sometimes they can make such a difference because you know who the other coach is going to go after. Right. So when your supporting cast shows up, but again, it's some nice. I got to check New London's D2.
I believe so.
So but you're getting non-conference games in some locally, some outside the area a little bit. I think the New London Mosinee East thing; those are some good battles that you look forward to as those Division II teams go up against each other.
And next week, Tuesday, again, some non-conference games in the GNC. And I think some, again, interesting games. You got Antigo facing Wittenberg-Burnhamwood. I think that's a nice little setup because we're both a little bit east of here where we are in Wausau. You got Lakeland and Merrill. That's always seems like every year those teams meet one way or the other, either up there or up at Minocqua or in Merrill. This year up in Minocqua. Rhinelander will be trying to get back on the winning track or get on the winning track against Crandon on the road coming up. And Medford faces Chippewa Falls. And Medford always seems to play those Big Rivers teams early to kind of give themselves a baseline going into the conference season.
Yeah, I think Medford stepping out to see where they stand a little bit against a bigger school is a good idea. Wittenberg, a very physical team. We'll go against Antigo for that. Rhinelander, like you said, you want to get a bounce-back win there. And then even for Tomahawk, I know it looks like Three Lakes is scoring-wise against Pines with that almost over 40-point mark. That might be a chance for Tomahawk to get a W and build some confidence early on in their season.
Merrillwood South. Last night, Auburndale, a team that I think is expected to be among the top teams again this season. If they weren't, it would be a surprise. And they started their season off with a 73-55 win against Colby. Caden Weinferder and Mason White Eagle, 20 points each for Auburndale. Alex Wilfart, 17. Those are three veteran players and off to good starts.
Yep, and they're going to be on and off in double digits all season. They're going to, Coach Weinfurt is going to rely on those three to put up some points for them. I think when you can go out and just looking at the score, it looks like a solid point margin for victory. That's what you want. You want your kids to go out, control the game, execute your strategies, and come out with a W. And then you have a time with practices here for that, which Auburndale goes with their scheduling to refine things before they jump in against Marathon in one of their first conference games.
Yeah, that's next Tuesday, and I guess let's jump right into that because that is the next game for Auburndale. That is the first game for Marathon. That is a huge game to start off the season, especially for Marathon, their first game overall. Auburndale has the one game. Now they're off for the weekend. Again, I'd imagine Auburndale likes the fact that they actually played a game last night.
You can... Again,
but that's what Marathon always does.
Right. Marathon does this every year.
And it works for them.
And so that's their tactics and scheduling. So I think they're accustomed to it. So I don't know how much advantage it has. But for Auburndale, I think it's a chance to get the rust off. Both coaches are going to know what implications are there because nobody wants to take a dinger in the conference right away and start out 0-1. So they're going to both come at each other. And you got to go Auburndale for them. They got to go into Marathon and play, which is never an easy environment. So I like it for us as fans that it starts off with something meaningful right away. When these games can have something on the line right away, I think it's a big deal.
Auburndale at Marathon next Tuesday can be heard live on our website, bullfallsradio.com, and Sports Stream 2 starting at 7 o'clock for the pregame show. Also, the game will be broadcast here on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 after the Wausau West hockey game against Wisconsin Rapids. Also, again, this weekend, some of these Merrillwood South teams involved in tournaments. Mentioned Newman Catholic, a real good challenge for Newman against some bigger squads. Starting off with the Northern Pines team, as we talked about, and then the possibility of facing their cross-street rival, the Wausau West Warriors or Stanley Boyd. For Newman, it is the start of the season. And something else I talked to you about, unlike some of the schools, Newman played football deep into the fall. They haven't had a lot of time off. They have a couple of their players who go from football to basketball. How hard is that for these young men without much of a gap after a long football season to go right into the grind of what will be a very long winter sports season?
Well, I think the thing that Newman has that'll help them out. There are a couple of guys on the team that they rely on for their point values and statistically and just their leadership overall. That they only play basketball, they didn't play. For the guys that played football and then they come out and they mentally have to work through that a little bit. I know they had a couple days off, but the thing with these guys, a lot of these guys have been playing for 4 years. They've been around there for a long time with Newman basketball, and they're just competitors. I watched it we had a Thanksgiving fun day, and they're trying to, they didn't want to lose in dodgeball. I mean, so they're going to be ready to go. I think the neat thing about this game with Pines is that these teams are built so similar. They both have these strong senior classes of kids that have just logged, you can't even count the hours from like fourth grade basketball on and done it together. So it'll be interesting to see, where the deepness of the rotation falls into play. Who comes out to play? Shooting at different gyms. Northland Pines plays in a little bit bigger gym. Newman plays a little smaller one. I always found that to be something interesting. But I think again, it gives you a good, strong competition right away to see where you're at and to see what you have to work on and to see what your team can do.
And Newman Catholic's games at the Wausau West Turkey Shoot, both the games Friday and Saturday will be broadcast live right here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Our coverage Friday against Pines will begin with the pregame show at 5:45 and the opening tip at 6 p.m. Also, Assumption will be involved in their annual Cranberry Classic. Friday, they take on Nakusa, and then will face either Columbus Catholic or Port Edwards on Saturday. Assumption is in the Merrill South right now, the school that's trying to work their way up. It's been a couple of down years against incredibly difficult competition, but it did feel like last season Assumption took a step in the right direction. And for them, it's always the Cranberry Classic to start things off and get a feel for what they have.
And I think they did. I agree with you. They took a step last year. They much more physical, were competitive in games where before it was like that's the team in the conference that everybody's going to get their win against. And I think they're going to do another jump forward again. They got some of those kids back that put up points for them. Second-year coach Josh Paltz is back again, so you get some routine and repetition. You know where everybody stands, and they'll be. I think it's Nakusa, Columbus Catholic, and Port Edwards in there. I know they'll see Nakusa, and then I think the other games to be determined based on how people finish on the first night. So I think
either Columbus or Port in the second.
Yeah,
as I said, which you apparently weren't listening.
I was checking
again.
One of my notes quick. I was.
It's almost like last year. It's like I say something, and all of a sudden you say something, and it's like I just said that.
Well, we got
Saturday.
Some people have to hear
Columbus Catholic or Port Edwards.
Yeah, some people have to hear things twice.
I tell you, I mean, it's like I expected more from you this
Maybe
year.
later in the show. I'm just warming up. But that Nakusa game, I think Assumption will get, and then they'll be playing one of those two teams.
And next Tuesday, Edgar. They don't play this weekend, but they host Newman on Tuesday night. That's one of the interesting games I think coming up in the next week.
Well, and Edgar relied heavily on their sophomore class last year, and so when I watched them the first time and the second time I saw them play Newman, it was a tale of two different teams. You could really see the maturity as those younger kids got more reps and the stronger they got through the season. So I think they have, calling last year a little bit of downtime, they still had a nice successful season, and I think they're going to just build upon that this year, looking to get at Newman right away. It's tough to go. Edgar Gym's not an easy place to shoot nor an easy place to play, but they have the same philosophy too. They usually wait a little bit in their game and take a break. Usually probably same thing going a long time with football.
The Merrillwood North Athens started their season off with a 59-43 win against Loyal. Shawamigan, who was in the book, listed as the preseason favorite. They had a rough opener last night, losing to Ladysmith 92-66. And Prentice knocked off Flambeau 69-58. 4 different Prentice players were in double figures. Anything jump out? It looks like Athens. Good start for the Blue Jays.
With Shawamigan's loss, I just think Athens looks like they're going to be in the forefront to win that conference. They got a little bit of height on that team, some athletic guard play back, and looking at some of the other scores in that conference, I think they're going to be the team to beat. And that was not knowing what Shawamigan had and just reflecting off that score from last night.
And the Merrillwood North jumps into conference play next Tuesday as well. Athens at Prentice, Rib Lake at Phillips, Shawamigan at Abbotsford. Again, right into the conference. Merrillwood always does that.
Right. They're playing their games by next weekend. So the warm-up games you got is basically this Tuesday, any tournament you want to play in, and then going right at it. And then their crossover games are already starting at the end of next week, too.
CWC North, Wisconsin Valley Lutheran, part of that league, and they opened their season last night, falling to Wild Rose 60-35. Did not get any numbers on that one, but obviously not the way you want to start.
No, a little bit.
Based on, speaking the obvious,
right? A little bit of a struggle in that game. They're gonna, if the schedule stands true to what I saw today, they're gonna have to bounce back and play Elman Bancroft on the 29th, which will be a little bit tougher too.
Yeah, next Tuesday, Elman Bancroft at Northland. Wisconsin Valley Lutheran next Tuesday. I wanted to mention this. They face Wausau Faith Christian. I think in the years on our show, we've never mentioned Wausau Faith Christian in a basketball matchup. What do you know about Wausau Faith Christian?
Well, I guess I don't know if they've done anything. Have they? I don't know. Have they transferred over to a WIA affiliated
I have
school
no
now?
idea.
Because they've never been that, just based on the numbers that they've had over at that school in the old St. Matt's building there on 28th Avenue. And I don't know. It's got to credit Wisconsin Valley Lutheran. Well, it should credit them with a win. I mean, they've got to. I don't know. That's a question. If somebody could give us the answer.
They got to win the game to give you credit with a win.
Well, right. I would like to think they would, but I guess we'll see. So I don't know if we'll have to look in the WIS Sports to see if Wisconsin or Faith Christian Academy is
or Wausau Faith Christian can contact us.
Yes.
Why do they have to contact WIS Sports? I mean, give me a break.
No, we'd have to look in there for the schedule. See what they're if they're giving them credit for games.
They can contact. Well, WIS Sports does not. The god of high school sports.
But
they don't give credit to wins. It's not WIS Sports who decides who gets.
No, they mark it in when you call it in, though. Most of the time.
But they don't decide.
Well, no, they don't. I'm not saying they decide the wins. They get to mark them down on the website.
Well, sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong.
Well, either way, we want to know if they're WIA affiliated.
And one other game last night featuring area teams was Wittenberg-Burnhamwood. They lost their opener to Pulaski 67-59. They have another non-conference game coming up next Tuesday at Antigo.
Well, and the only thing I have to base this on is I saw Wittenberg-Burnhamwood play in the summer. A physical team, a big team. It'd be interesting to see they lost Wazlowski and Shire, Sherrill. However, each guy's averaging double points, so they're gonna have to get some point production. And they didn't look heavy on the outside with their shooting ability. So if that's something that they can continue to work on, or if they're going to be more physical than other teams, that's probably going to give them their W's.
And based on other sports, Pulaski's always physical too. That's a tough basketball. That's a tough first game. So again, that's a good test for Whitburn as they try to get into their season. Got to take a quick break. We're going to talk about girls hoops. There's a lot of girls action because they started a week earlier than the boys. We'll talk about what's going on in girls high school basketball coming up, and then after that, at about 6:40 or so, we'll talk to the head coach of the Merrill High School girls basketball team, Mike DeBuhr, and then at 7 o'clock, it will be Vince Hanz from Wausau West, both their boys basketball and football teams. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. Along with Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes, talking right now about girls high school basketball. Last night, right here on Bull Falls Radio, we had ourselves a great matchup. The third-ranked team in the state in Division I, Nina, taking on 12th-ranked Wausau West. But like the playoff game last year in D1 last February, it was Nina knocking off the Warriors as Nina was able to win by a score of 55-36. 55-36. Lexi White had 15 points for the Warriors. West had won their opener last Thursday, winning at Chippewa Falls 73-56. Kenzie Deaton in that game had 21 points. Kelly Cray 17 points and 13 rebounds. For West, it was a good win on the road to start things off. And last night, it's obviously a very difficult opponent, but I think they would have liked to have seen a little bit more. Just from my judgment, watching that game, there was a huge drought for West in the first half. They came out, took us 5-0 lead, and then all of a sudden they were stuck on 7 for about 10 minutes. It went from a lead for the Warriors to being down by about 15 pretty quickly. West, I'll let you talk here. I thought they were going to be a little better last night.
Well, and that's I mean, obviously there's room for improvement. You got stuff you can work on. Those are tough ones when you go into those scoring droughts and you just can't find it for people, especially with West who has the scores. I mean, sometimes there's, I don't know. Sometimes as a coach, you're working all angles. You're trying to find something that'll work, and it's just one of those times where it's just not going to happen. And then especially you tack that in when it's a good opponent. You said there were some injuries in that game, things like that are just going to stack up against you and make it difficult. They had a nice opening win against Chippewa. They're obviously testing themselves. You hope anybody that's dinged up a little bit gets back because they've got Germantown and Hortonville coming up down in Kettle Moraine. But they're going to get their point production on most nights with White and Deaton and Cray being in the mix. And there's who else I missed? There's one other one that could Anderson putting up some points. So you'd like to think that there's always going to be somebody to piggyback off of and that they all can't go cold at once. But again, there's also that domino effect that happens sometimes where you can't throw it in the ocean and your defense isn't creating those points that it needs to, and against good opponents, that's sometimes going to be tough to take advantage of, and that's why you want to see that now so you can figure it out because you don't want that happening in your last game of the year.
Merrill 3-0. They beat Shawano 64-51 with Maya Ott with 23, Elena Pozorski 16, and then last night won by 20 at Medford. So winners of 4 games all season long last year for Merrill. 3 wins and 3 opportunities so far for Merrill, and all by significant margins. We'll have a chance to obviously to go a little deeper with Coach Mike DeBuhr, but man, I mean, learning to win is a big factor, and they've seemed like they've found ways to win early in very impressive fashion.
Well, yeah, the score difference between the point totals it says a lot. It says early on they're confident in their play. They're executing, I would assume, what the coach needs them to do, and to get those quality wins early on, be 3-0 at this point, and again, they crushed Ashland. Shawano was 13 points and 20 against Medford. Those are quality numbers that those girls probably weren't used to last year, and I think that makes a big difference in how they're starting off right now and things to look forward to until Christmas break.
Let's lump 3 schools together. DC, Everest, Wausau, East, and Rapids. Everest 0-2, East 0-3, Rapids 0-3. Everest lost by major margins to Kaukauna 101-26. Chippewa Falls last night 68-44. Braylon Byer, the only double-digit scorer for Everest in both those games, 14-13. East 0-3 after losing to Newman by 13 and Gillett by 5 last night. And Rapids lost a tough one on the road to Toma 55-54, and then last night by 25, 55-30 to Oshkosh West. Obviously, it's still very early. It's very much non-conference basketball up to this point, but at the same time, a pretty tough start for those 3 schools.
Well, yeah, I mean, Everest, the big one against Kaukauna is you just move on and forget about because that's a tough one. But I'm sure knowing Coach Schilling and his competitive edge that he has, he's going to want to get those scores a lot tighter, and they're going to have to rely on Byler, who seems to be putting up most of their points, and to make way against the Valley, because if you're looking at scores, competitive close scores and overlapping scores of teams that they're going to have with common opponents, Merrill's starting to set themselves a little bit higher than a couple of the teams you just listed because of the way they're beating these common opponents. East, again, that's always a tough one. That program, just under Coach Walvo last year, you're trying to fight for that first win in conference and forever, and trying to continue those ways is real difficult. And some of the biggest things I hear is just the getting people to give a lot of time to take that next step from the off season, and those are moments that have to transpire to do that. Otherwise, you won't create that win category to be what it is.
Marshfield 2-0. They had a nice win last night at Eau Claire North, 69-50. They were actually down by a couple of points at halftime. Outscored ECN 36-15 in the second half. Danielle Minsas 25. Ayana Busum 17 for Marshfield. I think that is a team that is, if anybody's going to be able to challenge West, and they even still going to be difficult, but Marshfield does look like the last couple of years it's a program that's been taking steps forward.
Yeah, they've jumped from the bottom of the valley the last couple of years that we've looked at their games and statistics, and two quality wins. You beat a good Lakeland team, and to go on the road and beat Eau Claire North by 19 is another quality win. And they're going to keep fighting because they're going to play Lacrosse Central. And from what I'm seeing on the stats, Minsas and Colbeck are giving them some double-digit scoring, which is going to help out. So a nice 2-0 start for Marshfield.
And Stevens Point now 1-1. They, like Wausau West, challenged themselves against one of the best teams in the state last Friday. Nina knocked off Spash 89-54. Emma Josie 17 points. Lauren Strassman 10 for the Panthers. So I guess Stevens Point can say, hey, we had trouble against Nina, so did the conference champs Wausau West.
Yeah, kind of create yourself in the things of things. Jossie's 18 points, 9 rebounds averaging right now, and they're going to jump over to Kettle Moraine and play some good, more non-conference opponents. So and they always have, that's kind of a little bit of it's been a rivalry over the years. And I shouldn't say a little bit. It's been a rivalry over the years, the Wausau West girls and the Spash girls. So I think that one's going to be kind of a fun watch, and Spash could find themselves hanging around there with Marshfield and West at the top of the conference too.
Looking at the GNC, the two teams we normally keep a close eye on is Mosinee and Lakeland. Mosinee now 0-2. They lost to Lake Mills 61-42 last night. Taylor Jershely had 16 points for Mosinee. But again, as we talked last week, it's going to be a work in progress for Mosinee after losing an incredible number of talented seniors from last year's great team.
It's very difficult sometimes. Graduation can hurt you a little bit sometimes. Just at the beginning of the season when you got to get your feet wet, find your identity, and you might take a couple lumps before you can right the ship the way you want it to go. You got to find out who's going to be your scorers, who's going to be your leaders, who you're going to rely on. Even if you think you have it figured out, those people have to show up in those games and make the most of it. So yeah, an 0-2 start, something they'll look to continue to work on as they progress in the season. But again, they got Hudson. These aren't easy games to start off with.
No, it's not. Lakeland is now 1-3. They finally got their first win last night. Took out some frustrations at Shawano 71-31. But again, Lakeland has played some good opponents. They started with that narrow loss to Marshfield. They fell to Kewaskum last weekend, 62-47. Christina Wilmette had 22. Juliana Wilmette 15 in that game, and then fell to Prairie du Chien by a score of 67-59. Juliana Wilmette had 30 points in that game. Christina 13. But we've seen the script before, haven't we?
Yeah, it's a repetition of last year where you start off against strong non-conference opponents and see where you kind of fit in, see what you got to work on with the Wilmette sisters, and their averages and what they're able to do on the floor. You're not going to be out of basketball games, and I think they're going to be a very strong team at the end of the season.
Looking at the Merrill South before we take a break, and we'll look at the other girls' basketball conferences a little bit later on in the program. But Merrill South, I saw Auburndale face Marathon last Thursday night, and Auburndale defeated Marathon 68-47. Anna Marie Aui and Josie Ertl had 14 points each. Gracie Krings and Ashlyn Grimm had 11 points each for Auburndale. Ashley Packatong 11, Callie Perhoda 10 for Marathon. But this Auburndale team, who then beat Stratford last night 56-50, they look like a team that's going to be maybe the target for some of these squads early in the season.
Right. They're going to go challenge Assumption right away. And Aoi, we've talked about, she seems like she's been there 5-6 years. We can't keep track of it anymore. But again, almost 10 rebounds a game, 20 points a game. She's kind of the ringleader of that team, but it's not that there's a weak supporting cast there either. There's other kids that can go off on double-digit scoring nights for Auburndale too, and to be sitting at 3-0. And here's again how quickly the conference season. They're 2 games in, they're 2-0 in the conference. So a nice start to the season for them with 3 quality wins.
And Edgar also 2-0 in the conference. They defeated Newman Catholic 59-48 last Thursday. And then last night, they went to Marathon and knocked off the Red Raiders 52-37. So that's a really good start for Edgar as well.
Yeah, and Edgar Borchardt is an extremely athletic player. She's going to score a lot of points for him. They're, I think, going to be in the mix of things, too, to be one of those teams that won't be overlooked in the conference. It's going to make the conference that much stronger.
Assumption started their season off finally last night. They went to Wausau, knocked off Newman Catholic 65-41. It's still a young team, but still a loaded, talented team as well.
Yeah, and Assumption has, they were in the state title game last year. They've got that tradition that just keeps, springing forth with on how they did. Like to sit, play a lot of different defenses, sit in their zone defenses. So, starting the bar where they want to be hanging at the top of the conference with a win against Newman Catholic last night.
Well, we have to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and our next two segments have our guests. Coming up at the top of the hour, 7 o'clock, we'll be joined by Vince Hanz from Wausau West High School, terrific football and basketball performer. And coming up next, Michael DeBuhr, the head coach of the Merrill Blue Jays. The Merrill girls off to a 3-0 start on the season. A nice road win at Medford last night. So we'll talk to him. Coming up next, it's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 12. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. BullFallsRadio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. Along with Jeff Grass, I'm Chad Holmes. And now it's time for the first of our two guests this weekend. We're very happy to welcome back to the program the head girls basketball coach of the Merrill Blue Jays, Mike DeBuhr. And Coach, second time you've been on the program. Last season was your first campaign. It was a tough season. You went 4 wins and 20 losses. You came on late, and we talked about that. This year, you had the first year under your belt. You had a full off season to develop those relationships that every coach has to within a program, and you've come out and won 3 games in a row. What's the biggest difference the first week and a half of the season for the Merrill Blue Jays?
I'll just start by saying last year when I was here after we won against Danigo, we didn't win another game all year. If that happens this year, don't invite me back because it's probably a no. But the biggest difference this year is like we're connected more, we're together more. We know what's expected of me, what I'm asking of the girls to do. We're more of a family this year than we were last year. And we instilled some things this summer to help build that. We instilled some things in the preseason to help that culture grow. And I'm super proud of the team and the girls and how they come together. And, who would have thought 274 days ago when we lost that playoff game to Medford that here we would be sitting 3-0. And I'm super happy and proud and humbled for those girls and all the hard work that they put in to get here.
Well, Coach, I've always thought that if I can remember back when I did it, just the amount you can learn from
way back. Well, hard to remember that, right?
Yeah, it is hard to remember, but I'm doing it okay. How much you learn about yourself and what you from that first to that second year. I mean, and then a good coach keeps learning and learning and learning. What do you think is one of the biggest things that you found out of yourself to bring about this early season success from year 1 to year 2?
I think one of the biggest things is just like the ability to be tough. The ability to handle adversity in tough situations. Last year, our schedule was super difficult. Our non-conference schedule, our 9 losses, we lost by 27.4 points a game, right? So, and then that's not even talking about our conference, right? Just the ability to be tough. This year, we installed an award that we hand out weekly. You can view our winners on our Facebook page called Tough as Nails. It's not about who scores the most points or who has the best shot. It's who's willing to do the dirty work, right? Who's going to dive for loose balls on the floor? Who's going to take charges? Who's going to pick those players up off the floor when they fall down, when they battle for those teammates? Because those are winning plays, right? And those things are contagious. And those things are culture winners. Those things are what parents want to see, what fans want to see. And, they ultimately start to build on each other, and success comes. And I think that's been a main key from year 1 to year 2.
Learning to be successful, learning to win, learning to make those winning plays. It's easier said than done because winning can be habit forming, but losing can be habit forming. And that's one of the things early this season that your team has been able to win. Did you see that in the run-up to the start of the season, that these girls were doing those little things that changed coming up short in the game to ultimately being successful in the game?
That's a very great point because last year we had 2 games all year win or loss in single digits. So we weren't in tight games at all. And this year we had stress at Shawano. It was a 4-point game with 2 minutes to go. Last night it's a 4-point game at halftime. But we just come together. In the big moments, we're battling now. We're not backing down. It's how we practice. And like the togetherness of the girls, like fighting for each other, having each other's back, like that's what we're about. And win or lose, we're just going to keep fighting and getting better for each other.
And talking about the girls a little bit, how about from what because when we look, if we don't actually physically see something or read an article of some sort, where, I'm looking at stats on with sports and things like that. So Ott and Pazorski stand out with some of the point totals. But again, like you said, it's not always about that. So how about, some of the things you've liked about your personnel or individuals that are doing well so far this season?
Sure. We'll just start with Preva Payan. She tore ACL in September last year playing powder puff football, like a week before I got the job. And she hasn't played competitive basketball in 18 months. She wasn't available this summer. So her stamina physically, we're just trying to get her back in basketball condition and shape, but she's going to be a force and a huge impact player. And we're 3-0, and she's not averaging 6 points a game, right? So we still got that grow. We are just scratching the surface that way. But when we talk like Elena Pazorski, when we talk tough as nails, that's her, 11 points a game, 7 boards, 5 assists, and she's 14 of 14 from the free throw line to start the game. I'll give you last night, she commits her 4th foul 15 minutes ago in the game. All right, we got to put her in the bench. I talked to her about 11 minutes to go. We're +6. I'm like, Elena, I need 2 minutes from you. You cannot foul. Don't be aggressive. Don't go for rebounds. Just bring the ball up and lead us. She goes on at 11 minutes. Bring her out at 9:26. We go from +6 to +13. 7-point difference. She took a charge in that scenario. She made 2 free throws. The girl's tough as heck. And it's awesome to see that from your point guard, your leader. She was team captain last year. She's a returning all-conference player. And it's super cool that the success that she's having this year, just given where she's come from and Merrill's history with coaches, I'm super happy for her. And then what can you say about Maya Ott? She's averaging 29 points a game, 3 games in. She's a self-made player, right? The girl's in the gym all the time. Mm-hmm. She's at Riverside in town. She's just loves to play the game. Who would have thought as a freshman or even last year she was our leading scorer, to see what she's doing now. And it's just a testament to what she does when no one's watching her and the character she has. She's a humble girl. She's a quiet girl, but man, can she compete and can she fight. And just super proud of her and the progress that she's made and the growth that she's made. And like I told the guy on the radio, she's like the best junior in the area that nobody really knows. And we're starting to learn it now, and it's a testament to all the work she's done.
Again, talking to Merrill Blue Jay head girls basketball coach Mike DeBuhr here on the Big High School Sports Show. And I'll say it, a couple of times I saw Maya Ott play last season, including the playoff game, you saw the seeds. You saw the seeds, even as a sophomore. And sometimes those younger players, that's one of the interesting things, when losing can really weigh you down. I didn't see that with her. She looks like she has that toughness to take some of the scrapes in a tough season and not let that defeat her. And you need those kind of players in order to turn it around as quickly as possible.
That's a great point. The first open gym we had, the first couple practices last year, you could see the potential right there. And we started her as a sophomore the first game, and she was growing, developing. She's becoming that leader. But just like from the chemistry of that team last year, we brought her off the bench for the Wausau East home game, right? And because we wanted to have some more senior leadership out there. And the way she responded to that, in the growth that she developed from that, she became our leading scorer, kind of took off from that point. I had 17 against East. The Wisconsin Rapids game, she had 23 last year. That's where the foundation was built. And then this summer, day after day in the gym, working on her craft, working on her game. Her brother's an 8th grader. That's a name you're going to hear in the future. It's a self-made player. Is there a lot of talent there? Is there a lot of skill there? Sure. But when you're in the gym all the day, you can develop all that. And it's a testament to her, and I'm super proud of her.
And you mentioned Prairie Payan because I think that's important. Just when you come back from a knee injury, it does take time to get back into playing shape, get that basketball feel again. But just having a 6-footer out there, for you as a coach, that opens things up in a big way, doesn't it? To make what you're able to do, to be able to put your other players in the position that maybe they could be more successful in. Just having her out there must be an incredible change.
Yeah, it's so great to have some size inside, some toughness, some rebounding, some, she's going to rip a board down or grab an offensive board you don't expect and put it back. And, as we prepared all summer, we knew this was coming, right? So we really developed our guard play this summer, knowing that we got an inside presence come fall, come winter. And, it's going to take some time. Right. And sometimes I think even her, expecting big things right away, it's going to take time. But when it comes, watch out.
Well, you talk about a ton of the positives. You can see, you're having good connection with the girls. You're proud of what they're accomplishing right now. Obviously, record-wise is good. The scoreboard's coming out the way you like it to be. How about on the other side, though? Anything you see that right now early on, because, coaches are also analyzing all that. What do we got to keep working on? What do we got to improve, whether it's for playoff time or for start of conference play or it's going down the road that we need to work on this now because this part of our game has to be ready? Anything that's one thing that's standing out to you that, hey, this is one thing I really want to work on, an area to hit on so that we become the best team we can possibly be?
Right now we have 7 varsity girls. Our 8th girl plays full-time JV. All 5 starters on JV are on the varsity bench. I mix and match in games if needed. Last night we needed to. Developing a bench is going to be critical for us, especially when injury come, when foul trouble come like we saw last night, in tight games and tight situations. We're going to need to be able to count on more than 7. That's the biggest key, and we're practicing them all together, so that's going to come, The other thing is just like last night we did not shoot the ball well. And against better teams, they might, how are we going to handle that and be able to come around that? It's real cool playing up-tempo against Ashland. Well, then in Shawano, we had to slow it down a little bit. And the ability, because we had to go to zone second half because of foul trouble. But the ability to be able to win both ways is super cool. And we've got to keep building that so that whatever environment or situation we get to, if we got to go to the bench, if we got to play a different style, that the girls are ready for it and prepared for it.
It's interesting you mentioned that first game. I was checking on Facebook on the Merrill radio station, and they had the score, and there was all these comments from either parents or fans talking about how much fun it was to watch you play that night. And when you say, we were running that night, so they were all enjoying that style. And that brings me to the point as well, because last year when you came in, you talked about that you were getting great support. It was not an easy transition, that folks knew that it's going to take a little time to build. How important was that, to enable you to get through this first full off season, get into the second season, knowing that, hey, I have the support to try to build this program basically from the foundation up?
Yeah, the support, the parents, the community, the administration has been absolutely fantastic. And, we are trying to build this from the ground up, step by step, brick by brick, to get this thing where we want to go. And, to hear, people commenting on games and excited. If you go follow our Facebook page, we're getting likes and stuff that we never got before. The buzz in the school, the buzz in the community, super, super happy and grateful for all of the support we're getting. And hopefully that just builds and builds and builds and becomes tighter and closer and connected, that wherever we play, whatever we're doing, that they're all following along and watching and cheering us on.
Well, and looking at your, jumping back to your schedule again, I'm always often curious how much coaches get a say in, because certain coaches don't want to play till this date, or certain coaches want this many practices before even if the first date. I guess looking at your schedule, did you like it right away? Are you happy to be playing over Thanksgiving, the tournament? Are you happy you got the non-conference games building up into your Valley schedule, or is there a different way, or is this your philosophy of what you have to build into those conference games?
What a great question. This is a deep question. I don't know how much you want, but I'll just say what I think.
Go for it.
Like last year, we got the 10th seed in our tournament despite beating Wausau East and despite beating Annandale. And upon reflecting upon that, my administrator kind of let me do the schedule how I saw fit. And whether you play a D1 Stevens Point team or you play a D5 Columbus Catholic team, a win is a win is a win when WIA seeding comes. It's all about wins and losses and opponents, strength of schedule, and that's all based on win, has nothing to do with division. We're going to the Cranberry Classic this weekend for that reason. We're going to a tournament over Christmas in a small little town called Elmwood that you may never heard of. But we're going to play D4 and D5 teams that are going to have double-digit wins come tournament selection time. That's only going to help us, right? We get tested so hard in our conference, right? We play 10 D1 games a year. We don't need to go search for that outside the conference, right? Wausau West, Stevens Point, Marshfield this year, they're going to prepare us for whatever we face tournament time, and they're all challenging themselves in the non-conference too, right? So they're going to pile up some losses perhaps. So all of that together is just going to help us come selection time, because what do we not want to do? Go to Lakeland for a regional final, right? We want that in Merrill. We want that in New London, in Mosinee, anywhere but Lakeland. Let's see them on a neutral floor in sectional. That's the mindset going into that schedule and why we're playing the way we're playing.
We got about 90 seconds to go. Let's ask you about your conference. You said it. You mentioned some teams that are solid, but where do you feel like Merrill can be in your conference this year?
Yeah, Wausau West, Marshfield Point are all really difficult. It's that spot for fourth. It's Rapids, it's Everest, it's Merrill. Those are going to be our biggest games of the year, is at Rapids and at Everest. For them, it's maybe just another game, but for us, if we can go 6-6 in the league, it's going to pay big-time dividends to whether we have a home regional final game. So going into them games, preparing for those games are going to be critical. And what's our health like going into those games? But the conference, top down, top three, are probably a step above. That race for 4, that race for 5 and 6, where do we fit in there? It's going to pay big dividends come playoff time. And then, Wausau East is rebuilding and regrouping, and they got some growth to go.
Well, Coach, congrats on the start this year. Obviously, it's been a lot of fun for you and your girls so far. Best of luck as you go to Rapids for the Cranberry Classic, and we'll be in touch during the course of the season and hopefully get some of those hardworking girls here on the program.
Oh, we would love that. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the invite. It's pretty cool to be the first coach you interview in the season.
I tell ya.
How good is Merrill?
I know,
Thank you, guys.
I know. Head coach Mike DeBuhr from the Merrill Blue Jays again joining us here on the Big High School Sports Show. We're going to take a quick break and then come right back and have our student athlete guest for this week from Wausau West, their outstanding football quarterback and now getting set for the boys basketball season, Vince Hanz. He's coming up next here on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230 WXCO. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. BullFallsRadio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. Thanks again to Merrill High School girls basketball coach Mike DeBuhr for joining us on the program. Now it's time for our student athlete guest for this week. Guy that I've seen quite a bit during the course of the fall. Outstanding football quarterback, but no rest for Vince Hanz. And Vince, thank you for coming on over and joining us on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, before we talk basketball, got to talk a little bit of football because quarterback of the conference-winning Warrior team that went 8-1 in the regular season, 9-2 overall. Your first full season as a starting quarterback. I imagine that you've worked a long time to get to that position. How would you describe this season? Was it everything that you dreamed of, that you wanted to when you took over as the quarterback for the Warriors?
I mean, it was obviously a lot of fun. I had a great time. It was something I'd been looking forward to since I got into high school. So just being able to go out there with guys that I've been playing with since I was in 4th grade was just a really awesome experience. And winning games with them is the greatest feeling you'll ever have. So,
what was the highlight this year?
Beating Everest.
Badly,
yeah.
You don't see that very often, and to wrap up the regular season with that impressive win against DCE was exceptionally big. I wanted to, before I let Jeff jump in here, one of the things that kind of, in terms of lifting you this season, you had an opportunity last year when Jack got injured. And I thought one of the biggest wins that West had last year was over in Marshfield after the tough loss where Jack went down against Wisconsin Rapids. How important was it to get that taste last year to help you basically get off to, I think, probably a very quick start this year?
Yeah, I mean, that was super important for me because that was kind of, when I came in against Rapids, when Jack got hurt, that was like my opportunity to be nervous and overthink stuff. And like, that was just, I made mistakes that game, dropped a couple snaps and stuff. And then coming into Marshfield, I was like, all right, so we're done. We've been here before. We can go out there and just play. And then coming into this season, it was like, well, I've been here before. This is just go play football. So that was very helpful because it kind of took away that not knowing what's going to be happening out there feeling.
Well, Chad and I were talking about it off air a little bit of, when you have that success, you pile all your emotions, the mentality, the physicality into to help drive the team to a good solid football season or a great year. And is it hard to switch? Is it hard to, like, even if it doesn't run close, to go from one, is it hard to go from football to basketball, whether you're done early or not, after you lay it all out there for that one season, and all of a sudden I gotta get back and go, or is there a pretty easy transition? I guess just to...
Well, basketball and football are obviously, I think, very different to me. I think they just have different feelings, the way that you play and the way that, you are with your team. Your basketball team is a smaller group of guys, and I feel like you know everyone a little bit better, and it's just having those connections with those guys. And I'm really close with the seniors on our team, and it's like, those guys don't play football, some of the seniors on that team, and they're just basketball guys. So then talking to them during football season, they're talking to me like, hey, are you ready for basketball? And it just kind of gets you ready to go play basketball with those guys while you're in football, while focusing on football.
How is it different in terms of your role on the team? Because as the quarterback and as a senior, you have a definite role. Because the quarterback has, in addition to, being the QB and everything else, there's a leadership role in that team. What's your role on the basketball side? Do you feel like you have a similar leadership feel, or is it a different kind of feel for basketball?
For basketball, I would say it's really similar. It's like we have a lot of young guys on our basketball team, and I've been around, and playing quarterback really helped this year and getting my voice as a leader. So then to go out there with those younger guys, and I just feel like being able to know what to say to them and like how to gain their respect and their trust for what I'm saying definitely just helps with that type of leadership role. And I would say I'd have a similar type of leadership role on our basketball team as a football team.
Does momentum carry from one sport to the other? Do you feel like, hey, things went well in the fall? Can you carry that, or do you have to start all over again, build block by block?
I think it's definitely, you got to build some new energy. It's not the same thing. It's not the same guys, not the same coach. It's like you got to get your new identity for basketball. You can't just say, oh, we were good in football, we're going to be good in basketball. You have to have a mentality to improve every week and improve every day.
And moving on from football to basketball, not in a bad way, but
he's a basketball guy,
well,
so
jump and go forward. But you guys you've crossed over from one season to the next. You talked about a little bit how you're got some young guys you got to take under your wing. You're using your leadership skills from one sport to the other. In terms of for you personally, what's your excitement? You're going into this weekend with some games coming up, and you've probably had, if I remember anything correctly, you've plenty of practices. We scrimmage. We're sick of beating on each other. Bring some other colored jerseys in here where they're not our friends anymore. What's kind of the locker room the banter or emotion that what you're looking forward to this weekend? I guess in the games that you have.
Yeah, I think you really hit on it, is just bringing in someone else. Like, you get sick of playing against the same two guys in practice, guarding the same guys in practice, and doing the same stuff. And it's like, that's necessary, but we're out there to go compete, and we're out there to go play other teams and win. So, and the greatest feeling is when you win. So go out there and compete is definitely like our mentality right now, is just to go have an opportunity to have our first time competing against another team.
And how about for yourself? Like this weekend, what do you want to bring to the table? What's going to help your team be propelled in the right direction? If a couple things you think you can accomplish on the court. I'm not saying like 10 dunks or 40 points from the free throw. You know what I mean? So what do you want to bring to that game?
Definitely just toughness and like competitiveness. I'm very competitive, and I just think if I kind of set an edge, it'll rub off on my teammates, and that's something I feel like I can bring for sure.
Again, we're talking to Vince Hanz from Wausau West High School, senior for the Warriors, both on the gridiron and now on the basketball court here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. You talking about the toughness factor, because when you look at your team, for the boys basketball team, when I was watching the scrimmage the other day, not a lot of big guys. It's interesting when you go from football where you're the quarterback, you don't think, I know you're a big guy. I mean, I could see when you were on the field as a quarterback, you're still a big guy, but you're not thought of as being the physical leader on the football field. Do you feel like you have to be a physical leader because of your size and I would say the lack thereof of size on the boys basketball team?
It's kind of funny to me. It's just like, sometimes I'm out there playing basketball, I'll just feel like, oh, this is kind of how the O-line feels, huh? Like, I'm out there setting screens for, like, Cole and Beckett and all our shooters, and it's just like, wow, this is way different. Whereas I'm sitting back there getting protected. Now I'm going out and hitting guys for them, and I don't know, it's kind of fun, to be honest. I like it. It's a different type of challenge, and it's really fun. So,
who are the guys that, again, you're looking at your team, who are the other guys that are looked at as the leaders of this team, whether it's in the locker room, whether it's on the sideline, whether it's between the lines on the court? Who are the guys that everybody looks to as leaders besides yourself?
I think Cole is definitely a big leader on the team, vocally and on the court. He's a really good basketball player, and he's really vocal. Beckett, he's a senior. He started last year. He's been playing basketball forever. He's very dedicated to basketball. Definitely has a voice on the team. Definitely looked at as a leader. I think then younger guys like Brett Butala, he needs definitely has a voice on the team. Definitely has a lot of respect among guys in his class and younger guys. Mm-hmm. And then I think Griffin has that connection to the underclass, the sophomores and the lower underclassmen, where that would be the guy they would go to talk to if they had a issue or a question. I think that's really nice to have that many guys who I feel like I would trust to be answering questions and taking responsibility, and I feel like Coach trusts us too, so it's definitely a good mix of guys.
What do you think early on, just from what you've been watching in practice with your teammates, just from what you know and you observe and from what seems to be the overall aura of your team, what do you think is going to be early on the identity? Are you guys going to be known for your stingy defense, like you said, some toughness, dangerously offensively, whatever you want to label your team as? What do you think that you're going to see out of this year's Wausau West Warriors right away to start the season off?
I think Coach is always pushing us to be great on defense, so I think that is definitely something we need to make our identity if it isn't right away, because they say that defense is what wins you championships, so you got to go out there and play good defense, and I think Coach wants us to play good defense. I think if we're willing to play good defense, we can, so I would definitely say defense.
We'll talk more about the upcoming season, but let's step away from the gridiron, step away from the basketball court. I know you're a busy guy, but what do you like to do when you get away? Is there anything that you like to do just for fun?
Yeah, I got a fantasy football league with my buddies. That is a lot of fun. So,
are you the commissioner?
I'm not. No. Cole actually is. I'm pretty sure he's tampering, but
How good are you? I mean,
I'm 5-6 this year. I'm not doing so great. Yeah.
But it must be nice to do something that kind of takes your mind away from either school for a little while or you're, as a quarterback, there's probably things in your head all the time, and now for basketball, just do you look at it as a way to get away from it all, think about different things?
Yeah, I mean, it's just for fun. It's just, we have fun and we mess around, so it's definitely nice to just take something lightly and not so serious, because, for me, like, sports is a really serious thing, and it's obviously fun, but, like, you're out there to compete, you're out there to get better, so having something where it doesn't matter if you get better, it's kind of nice.
What's your favorite class in school?
I have a graphics class. It's really fun. I've been taking it since I was a freshman, so I'm in the 3rd class for graphics, and it's definitely a class I enjoy a lot.
Do you have plans to go to college?
Yeah. Yep.
Any idea where you're going to go at this point?
I'm not quite sure yet, no.
Are you hoping to continue to be athletically inclined at the next level?
Yes, I am hoping so,
Is it, football?
Yeah.
Have folks been talking to you about football?
A little bit, yeah.
Want to share anybody, or is it a big secret?
Oh, I mean, just UW system schools
good.
around, yeah.
The thing about it is when people say, what is the percentage of high school athletes that go to the next level at any division? It's very low. Is it single digits? Single digits. I mean, it's really the fact that you might have that opportunity. And do you take your predecessor, Jack Barron's, last season? Warriors have been riding the running backs the last couple of years, and I bet you there are times you're saying, Coach, you got to throw it a little bit more. But Jack didn't throw it a lot, but he still got the opportunity at Ripon, where I think he's the number 2 quarterback this year on a team that's been outstanding. You got to feel confident that people see. I mean, you got great size for a quarterback. You throw a really nice ball. Does that help you realize that, hey, they're still going to see me and give me that opportunity?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're a big school. We're good. I mean, there's people to come to watch. I mean, Brant plays with us. He's got 16, 18 D1 offers. Right. There's people watching our games for sure. So it's not so much about the stats for me. It's just, how I perform. And I definitely know there's people who have seen me play, and there's opportunities for me to play.
A record as 10-2 as a starting quarterback ain't too bad, is it?
No.
You can put that on your resume. That'll catch people's attention.
Will you continue, once you decide your college, will you continue it along those lines with, do you want to do something with graphics or graphic design? Is that, since you've taken a lot of classes, or do you even have any idea a major route, what you might want to major? I know it's way early, but.
Yeah, I was leaning towards a business type of degree in college, so more that type of thing.
And I'm always curious too. Seniors, I think it's so hard because you're on borrowed time with stuff you love, and I always hated that fact when I coached and I saw those emotions and expressions in the locker room that I can't give you any more time. It was a hard spot to be in as a coach. What are you going to miss most about either sports in general or your football season? Looking back on it, that it's some of it's done and some of it's going to start and then be done. What are you going to miss most about it?
I mean, there's guys who I will never play with again, and I've been playing with them for so long, and I know them so well, and a lot of them really are my best friends. And it's when you think about that, after this year, you're not going to be doing those things with those guys. You'll still talk to them, you'll still see them occasionally. It's that's definitely what I'm going to miss the most, just the connections that you made and have through sports.
Which you mentioned the Everest game in football was a huge one. In basketball, is there a favorite rivalry that you're looking forward to renewing during the course of the winter?
Also Everest.
We hear that a lot from the West athletes. They love playing the DC Everest Evergreens. This weekend, let's talk about the start of the season. Obviously, very exciting start. It's always fun to have a tournament atmosphere at the field house for Thanksgiving weekend. Got some good competition that's coming in. What's your sense about this weekend? How excited are you and your teammates, first for Stanley Boyd and then potentially whoever you play on Saturday? Newman and Northern Pines both have exceptionally high expectations, perhaps looking to go to state this year. Some really good competition to start things off.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's a great opportunity to start our season, and we're looking to start the season on the right foot and get a couple wins right away. So that'd be nice to have a couple right off the bat.
Is it nice does it drive more pressure, or is it cool with you guys playing at home? I know sometimes people are like, I'll get out of, we'll go on the road a little bit, and it's just, there's not as many people there. We can kind of do our own thing, make our mistakes. And other people are like, I'm in my home environment. I'm on the court I practice on. I got family coming to town. There's people who come watch the game just to get out to watch games. How is it? Cool environment? A little nervous at the same time? What's the emotions leading into, I guess, playing this weekend?
Personally, I love playing at home. I absolutely love it. I don't like going on the road. I feel like when you're at home, you have everyone in the community has your back, and you just can't let someone come in and beat you at home. That's just a different type of mentality, and I love playing at home.
And I guess to wrap it up, Nowitzki always asks, and I'm not going to throw it on your table. I'll next time you can ask
Go
it.
for it. It's the same thing.
Coach Nowitzki, when we talk during football season, always asks a senior if, and obviously somebody that's been around as much as you have in terms of your athletic career, when you talk to a young classmate or a young teammate, a freshman, who may ask for something to think about, a little piece of advice. What have you taken away at this point? What piece of advice would you give a younger teammate about what you've learned over the last 4 years at West?
I would say keep working hard. Put your head down and work hard. If you feel like working hard isn't going to help you, you're just not looking at it the right way. Like, there's nothing in your life that if you work hard at it, you're going to be negatively impacted. So just as long as you're working hard, things will work themselves out, and there's benefits to working hard, so keep working hard.
Well, congrats on what was a fantastic football season. Look forward to seeing you Friday night over at the Field House when you face Stanley Boyd to start off the winter grind, which is always a grind. Does one season feel a lot longer than another season? It always feels to me like football goes by pretty quick. And then the winter, with all the holidays, I think, thrown in there, does the winter feel like a pretty big grind?
Yeah, I think the winter season is definitely longer. It feels longer than a fall season, but it's not in a bad way.
No.
It's just different. I feel like they're just very different.
I wouldn't know what to do if I didn't have all these sports during the winter, because I'm not out there skiing or anything. So it's nice to be a nice long winter sports season. Hopefully you and your teammates can have a nice long season go into sometime in March. That would be a perfect way to wrap up your high school basketball season. But Vince, again, congrats on everything you've been able to accomplish, and good luck starting on Friday night.
Yeah, thank you.
That's Vince Hanz from the Wausau West Warriors. We're going to take a quick break and come back. Jeff Gress, Chad Holmes, Big High School Sports Show here on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. And again, two terrific guests, Coach Mike DeBuhr from Merrill and Vince Hanz from Wausau West. And to talk about what we just heard, number one with Coach DeBuhr, you can tell how excited he is. I mean, it was not easy going, because as he said, I mean, he got the job in September of last year, not a lot of time to build, went through, had one of his better players, got injured during the Powder Puff football game, 4-20 on the season, got the short end of the stick on a seeding piece of business, and then to get the full off season, get Prela Pyan back, get some size, have some of those young players. You can see that he's very excited about what he sees from his program.
Yeah, and I think some of the coolest things are when you can see the coach's connection with the kids, and how, and they're not his own kids, and he's super excited about how they're doing and what they're able to accomplish, and that he gets to go to practice and games with them all the time. I think that was kind of the coolest thing for me, was that connection, and then that it's reflecting also in their win-loss totals too.
And then Vince Hanz, and you said it when he left. I mean, just, for us, it's easy because these kids come in and they're so good. They talk so well, such intelligence that they bring out, and a good leader. And I saw that during the course of the football season, helping his team to a conference championship and winning a playoff game, and everything he was able to accomplish, and then to come back and be, again, I think a major factor for his boys basketball team this fall. But again, when people say that, kids aren't what they used to be, they just need to come and listen to what these young people say to us every week.
Yeah, and every time they leave here, the one word that coming out of our mouths is quality. Just another quality individual in terms of the pride they have in their school, the pride they have of the job that they do in their sports, what they want to give back, the leadership roles they take, and he's a perfect example of that. And can get to see that continue into his basketball season.
And now it's time for Jeff Gress's favorite part of the show, because we get a chance to talk some high school hockey, and we're going to take a look ahead at both the boys and the girls in terms of high school hockey. And the hockey here in central Wisconsin has been so good for so many years. We've seen Wausau West with numerous state tournament appearances. The Central Wisconsin Storm is the defending state champs on the girls' side. And in fact, last night was the first night of high school hockey, and some Wisconsin Valley Conference teams were in action. The DC Everest Evergreens, a young hockey team, but they exploded for 7 goals in the first half of the game and knocked off Northern Pines 7-3. Sophomore Thomas Passano had 2 goals. Gavin Smith 39 saves for Everest, who are outshot 42-31. Also last night, East Merrill United, a program that struggled recently, but I think has the potential of being a bit of a surprise this year. And they were able to beat Chequamegon Phillips Butternut 12-2 last night. Zach Poggle had a hat trick. Sergei Wunsch and Parker Klebanow had 2 goals each. Jake Fear, who usually faces a lot of rubber, only had 13 shots go his direction, made 11 saves for East Merrill United. And Wisconsin Rapids fell in their season opener last night to a Reedsburg, Wisconsin Dells 4-1. Rapids had a 27-17 edge in shots. Carter Morrison had the only goal for Wisconsin Rapids. Looking at the WVC and looking at some of the area teams in the WVC, of course, I see Wausau West most of the time because we cover Wausau West sports here on Bull Falls Radio. And for this year, Wausau West has a couple of questions: defense and goaltending. They need to replace their all-state goaltender, Adam Prokop, 4-year starter for the Warriors. Colin Murtis played well in limited opportunities last year. He'll have to earn the net against some pretty good competition as well. West goalies will need to hope for some growth from players on the blue line, though. They'll have to grow into their roles. So, again, for Coach B.J. Brandt, D and goaltending, those are tough questions because that's really the foundation for a lot of hockey teams, and especially the best hockey teams.
Well, and with my as you put it, the disclaimer of my limited hockey knowledge is what Chad is really saying when he says my favorite part. But that I would think is a big part. And I've heard you talk hockey for years and cover West sports, and that's always a big attribute of theirs is that they keep control of that back end of the game and have strong defensive guys that are putting the puck back where it needs to go and keeping it out of the goal. And the goalies, to have a 4-year starter and have to, make that transition, that's a big deal. So those are some things to feel. But PJ Brandt has been around the block in coaching. So, and
I will say that up front, they do have some offensive firepower. They have players that will cause some headaches for opponents. Top scorer Thomas Garum is back, along with double-digit goal scorers Drew Leader and Grant Homestead. So, again, there might be some higher scoring games for Wausau West. And as you know, sometimes as a coach, you have to find ways. What are your ingredients? What are the ways we can win? And sometimes they'll be leaning a bit more defensively. It could be that way in basketball, too. And other times you have to lean on those people that can score.
Well, and I think that also that flexibility in this, how you're going to play the game. I mean, Coach DeBuhr alluded to it, and we had to jump from this to this to this to be successful. And I think if you have some headsy players and good coaches are gonna transition and adjust their team to what their strengths are. So there's always as much as defense is a big deal, you can outscore teams and win the game too. So that may be something that West might look at.
I think the favorite in the Wisconsin Valley Conference on the ice this year will be Stevens Point. They got some big firepower that returns. Leading scorer Cade Smiga. He is just a fantastic forward for Stevens Point. One of the top offensive talents in the state. He scored 36 goals last season, and they also bring back their second leading scorer, Jackson Schrader. Smiga, everybody has to keep an eye on him. Like Wausau West, Stevens Point does have a new goaltender, Hunter Christian, and also a new head coach in Matt Polkamp. And sometimes when you have a team that has expectations, and we're going to talk about this during the season, I think, on the basketball side with Newman, when you have very high expectations, it can be difficult for a new coach. Obviously, it's difficult when you come into a situation where you have nothing either, but at the same time, there's a different kind of difficulty and pressure for a coach that's expected to win and win big early.
Right. It's pressure on the players as well as much as the coaches is, and you got to make those connections and work that side with getting to understand, let the kids understand who you are, make sure you know who they are, and put the best strategies into play that are going to make them winners. And you just really have to judge what you have. Do you have kids that are very intelligent on the floor and know stuff? And I think, or do you have kids that need simpler systems? Do you have kids that need to work at different angles of what their strengths and weaknesses are? There's a lot to analyze, and sometimes the unfortunate part, I think, where the pressure comes in is sometimes you don't have that much time to do it,
right.
And you want to make the right call right away so that everything's running smoothly from the gates to make those expectations you have at the season. So I guess all in all, new coaches, a lot of pressure when you have a team that you think is going to be very talented.
And for DC Everest, a very young team for Coach Dan Vance. Like, it means questions, obviously, but it also means opportunities for some of these younger players to work their way into the lineup. A rather large number of freshmen on the roster. I believe 8 different freshmen were on their roster for the game against Pines last night. Thomas Passano led the team with 14 goals last season as a freshman. Got off to that good start with 2 goals last night in the opener. He is a big kid. Sometimes these kids develop a little bit earlier, different bit later. Just a sophomore, but 200 pounds, very strong, and he'll be a focus for DC Everest opponents. Everest has a solid, experienced top defensive line, 4-year varsity performer Cole Ress and Keaton Ottinger. And last season's backup goalie, Gavin Smith, moves into the top job this season. For DC Everest, again, when you have a young team, I don't think, as a coach, you can't panic early if you see some mistakes, can you?
No, it's not going to help their confidence level. That's why I think coming off of was 7-3 set against Pines, and I did actually see that on the highlights last night for the record. But it's
getting prepped,
right?
That's
right.
Like.
Well, I was thinking, what is Pines? My thoughts were, is Pines what they're supposed to be or not supposed to be this year? But anyways, I think with a young team early on, the coach has, you refine things, you tweak things that you see them making mistakes on, as much as you're always constantly building confidence in them. They need that factor to find that success. And you got to be willing to accept some of the mistakes that are going to come from that youthfulness. And I think if you have a good mixture of all that, it's going to challenge them and put them in the direction to continue to be winners and to start learning the ropes as they pick up the pace to be a competitive varsity squad.
East Merrill United, it's been a huge struggle for the Blue Jacks in recent years, but I think, and again, I'm going to put myself out there, I think they're going to be a much improved team this year. They feature a solid veteran and battle-tested goalie in Jake Fear. That kid has been around forever. He's been around, it's his 4th year. He is a senior now. He's been a 4-year starter. And the thing about it is, I looked this up today. I'm thinking, how many shots has he faced in his high school career? And up to last night's game, where he only faced 13, but it added 13 more, Jake Fear has faced an incredible 2,238 shots in his high school career. I mean, just amazing number of shots. He has been target practice for the last 4 years, but he has been exceptionally capable. He's kept East Merrill United in a lot of games, and now the Blue Jacks return 12 of their top 14 scores from a year ago, led by Zach Poggle, Nick Bodner, and Parker Klebanow. Again, I mean, they took lumps last year, but you got 12 of the top 14 scores. I mean, you don't see that very often. And they do have, that Poggle kid is a talented player. I think Coach Poggle, his 2nd year, I thought he did some things that made the program better a year ago. For East Merrill United, they need a little success. They need to be able to be more competitive against the opponents in the Wisconsin Valley Conference. And frankly, if you don't do it with a good goaltender and a lot of scoring back, it's going to be difficult to ever do it.
Right. And when I think, again, everybody works hard at their sport for the most part when they're invested and they're putting forth a lot of time and effort into and dedication, and you want to see that pan out. And I had Jake used to be in the Newman system. I taught him as a 6th grader. So to hear that, to see that, and just what I've heard of what he can do, in the net and help control games a little bit better, just to have an extra supporting cast where they have some scoring and take some pressure off. I mean, that probably seemed like a vacation to him last night.
He's used to 60 shots in 2 periods.
To only face 13 shots. So, you hope you like to see feel-good stories in sports, especially high school sports, where when teams have taken their lumps, haven't found that much success, but the players are working hard. You got some good components, some key cogs in there to make a jump that they're able to do that. So you hope for that as their season gets underway here.
And from the Great Northern Conference, Mosinee, boy, they had a terrific year a season ago, came up just short of the state tournament. They do return their top scorer, Caden Schmerler, and in fact, last night, Mosinee opened their season up with an overtime loss against Appleton United on the road, 5-4. Caden Schmerler had 2 goals in that game. He will be the big focus because Mosinee lost their 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th leading scorers. So obviously a lot of slots on the top 2 lines are going to be needed to be filled for Mosinee. Goalie Aiden Karst played the lion's share last season in net. He returns, but the numbers were not great. He's going to have to take a step forward with the likelihood of less goals being scored in front of them, at least early on for Mosinee. Mosinee's been a solid hockey program. They had a really good chance to make state last year, but came up short in the sectional against Lakeland. But again, Mosinee, one of the big early season tournaments we'll be talking about in a couple of weeks' time is the Marathon Cup. They've been knocking on the door of taking that cup away from West. They lost in the last second last year in the semifinals to West. But Mosinee, I think, looking at them, it may be a bit of a slower start, but they're going to find a way to be very competitive in the GNC when all is said and done. And also wanted to talk about girls because here we have been spoiled. I guess I should say I have been spoiled by the Central Wisconsin Storm because for the last 15 years or so, I've had a trip to the state tournament almost every year because of the Storm, and I appreciate.
That's a big deal. What a great statistic.
Like 14 of 15 years.
It's an amazing number.
Pretty amazing. And last year they won the state championship. And looking at the Storm this year, they have the 2 best goalies in the state. That's not debatable. I mean, sometimes, we got 2 of the best. No, these are the 2 best goaltenders in the state, and they play on the same team. And in hockey, you can't play 2 goaltenders at the same time. All the other positions, you rotate them. You have a line change. Hey, we got another forward line coming out there. You change up the defense pairing. You got Chloe Lemke and Claire Kalmus. Claire played as a freshman last year. She was the winning goalie in the semifinal. Chloe Lemke has been a 3-year performer for the Storm. She won the championship game. I'm going to ask you this. The biggest question for the Central Wisconsin Storm is how do the coaches keep those 2 players happy?
When you gave me a chance to talk right now, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. I'm like, how do you rotate 2 goalies? And what do they do for time? What do they do? I mean, I don't know. My guess would be if they're that valuable and of that much quality and they work hard and they're good kids, you got to find a way to play them towards their strengths based on your opponent and give them minutes that they're going to feel are respectable in the job that they're doing. Mm-hmm. That's a tough task to follow through on. A good problem to have as much as it's difficult. If they're good kids, they're going to be all about the team.
Right.
So I don't see an issue with that. And the Storm have their success, but balancing that act and getting everybody to feel value in what they put forth is not an easy thing.
And offensively, the Storm lose their top scorer, Samantha Federici, who graduated, but still plenty of firepower returns. Their 2nd leading scorer, Hannah Bauman, their 3rd leading scorer, Tristan Wickland, both very talented performers. They're back, along with a terrific sophomore, Gabby Heiser, who was last year's 6th leading scorer and also made some big plays at state. They do have some experience back on the blue line. Defenseman Ava Rohde, Taylor Friedel, among others. I guess bottom line is, in my somewhat expert opinion, the Storm look like they are lined up to be a very, very difficult out for anybody on the girls' hockey side in Wisconsin. So,
yeah, we're building in their tradition. It comes with the territory. Do you have an answer to that question for the goalie?
I'm just glad I don't have to make the decision because they both are fantastic. And I'm not. Sometimes you say, they're the 2. Yeah. It's not even close. This is 1 and 1A and 1B. I mean, Chloe Lemke is the senior. Obviously, that's maybe a factor. And then Claire Kalmus, who last year as a freshman worked her way in there because of what she was doing. I mean, as a coach, sometimes these answer themselves because if the kids work, they work their way in or they sometimes work their way out of the lineup.
Correct.
So, again, but if they both do everything you're asking of them, then it's just an incredibly difficult decision. And it's just, maybe
time will tell how it plays out.
Exactly. It's going to be very interesting. And the Storm, again, looking very, very strong. And the Storm, in fact, part of this Thanksgiving weekend, a smorgasbord of high school athletics. The Storm opened their season Friday and Saturday at the Gobbler Cup tourney in Mosinee. They take on Hayward on Friday. ECA Stars against University School in Milwaukee in the other semifinal. And I forgot to mention that the Wausau West hockey team has a terrific weekend. They go to Eau Claire for the start of their season every year, and they face one of the best teams in the state in Notre Dame Academy on Friday afternoon, and then they'll play either Superior or Eau Claire Memorial Saturday. Won't have the game Friday, but I will be heading to Eau Claire for Saturday's early game, West against Superior or Eau Claire Memorial. If the Warriors beat NDA Friday, they would play at 1 o'clock Saturday. If they fall Friday, they would play at 11 a.m. Saturday. And we'll have the game Saturday right here on Bull Falls Radio, WXCO. Should I ask Sully to get off the air early Saturday morning if the Warriors play at 11 o'clock? I need to get some extra
I want
time.
to text me how that goes.
I need a pregame show. No.
See what happens.
No. And actually, your compatriot Paul Micklig is going to be co-hosting with Sully.
He told me he was in for
because I can't be there Saturday. So we got to take a break. We're going to look ahead at basketball in the next week or so, and also touch again on what we missed on girls basketball before our first interview. So going to take a quick break, come back, still have more to come here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 12. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. BullFallsRadio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Jeff, we were in the midst of girls basketball before our first interview in the past hour. We did not get to the Central Wisconsin conferences, both North and East. And in the CWC North last Thursday, Northland Lutheran fell to Pittsville in the non-conference game, 73-54. Jocelyn Adams had 20 points and 6 rebounds for Northland. Also, Bree Kane, 15 and 7. Brianna Obesust had 13 and 7 for Northland. Again, Northland, they're going to be competitive in that league, and it's good to challenge themselves in the non-conference, isn't it?
Right. I think despite the point differential in the final score of that game against Pittsville, it looks like they've got enough point productivity. Obviously, they're going to have to find a way to take care of it on the defensive end. So I think in their smaller conference, they'll be okay as the season progresses.
And again, a team that I think we're going to be keeping an eye on, because I think Wittenberg-Burnham has a chance for a big year on the girls' side. Last Thursday, they knocked off Rochelt 73-35. Reese Rogowski, 26 points, 11 assists. Rory Salveson, the freshman, 16 points. Milena Granquist, 15. And then on Monday, they knocked off Antigo 55-30. Rogowski, 18 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Salveson, 13 points. Granquist, 10. Again, you got Rogowski there to lead the way, and it looks like Whitburn also has some kids that can help.
Hey, 3-0 is a nice mark to be sitting at for girls basketball right now, because they're getting early on in the season. Just getting those W's is a big deal, and I think you're going to have a good measuring stick, because we know of Coach Schneider and Marathon, and they
played in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and they're going to pop back on November 29th, right after we get off the Thanksgiving break, and play them, and they host them. So Marathon's coming over there. So I think that'll give you another good measuring stick of where they stand and what they're capable of doing.
Before we turn to the boys again, as we look ahead, we got these significant holiday tournaments. You got some conference games early next week. I guess, the first thing I would say is that Kettle Moraine tournament, where Wausau West and both Stevens Point will be testing themselves, is significant. Wausau East hosts the tourney as well here in town, if folks are looking for a lot of basketball over at Wausau East this weekend. And I think Merrill in that Cranberry Classic. I think these Valley teams, they have some interesting games this weekend.
Right. I think the Kettle Moraine, you're really testing. You're getting out of the area big time. You're getting a whole different area of the state. And that was always one of the biggest things I thought was if you can't host, or if you're not going to host one, get out somewhere and test yourselves. Because the farther you get down on the playoff road, which battle tests you, the officiating can be a little different. The atmosphere can be a little different in different parts of the states, and how basketball runs. So, you want marks on the sheet you're going to send off to the WIA with your wins and losses for playoffs, and I think this is a chance to do it. Test yourself early, figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are, and I think for West and Spash, just some. And if I miss anybody else, those two teams down at Kettle Moraine will be a good testing area. Merrill jumping over to the Cranberry Classic. They get to play Assumption.
I know that would be a very interesting game.
A nice little battle to kind of see where you're at, since we know a little bit about Assumption.
And for West against Germantown and Hortonville, both in the top 7, I believe, in the state
there's no
rankings.
rest after the Neenah game.
But the problem is Kinsey Deaton with that ankle injury last night. Boy, if she's not able to go for those 2 games, and of course she's someone that handles the ball a lot, that would make it tough on a West team that's not very deep to begin with. So again, we have to take a lot into consideration on what happens for Wausau West this weekend.
Right.
Any other?
I mean, jump into a different conference, girls.
Yeah. And what else are you looking at?
Again, if people are just any listeners want to know where to go, I mean, they have I can't think it's called the Tom Kissel Classic. If it might have a different name, and I apologize if it does.
No, it is actually. You're right.
A ton of games for girls and boys just over at the East Field. I mean, head over there and you're going to see a lot of teams. Another team that'll be. I'm interested to see how they bounce back with only 2 seniors, a little youth in their roster is Newman Catholic. They played Assumption, which is the top dog in their conference. Tough second game within their conference to play against that team, and they're going to go back in and pop right back against McDonald Central, which is non-conference, and to bounce back after those games it's a good feeling to see if you can come out and execute and do what you want. So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what them, and I think most of the other teams in the Merrill South for the girls are kind of laying dormant until after the Thanksgiving break.
And I think the only real conference game to keep an eye on is Lakeland and Mosinee. That is always the game in the Great Northern Conference, but this year Lakeland with all their big guns back. Mosinee right now rebuilding after the loss of their big senior class. It's not the time, I think, that Mosinee wanted to host Lakeland. You would have loved to see this a little bit later in the season.
I think early on Lakeland has a fair there, and we'll see if that one win they had after the 3 loss kind of is just a culmination of figuring themselves out and getting battle tested and being ready. I just think that type of schedule that they have is going to get them that W against Mosinee. Absolutely.
Well, let's turn to the boys, what we're looking at for the coming week. And again, I mean, a lot of activity. It looks like a great majority of the Wisconsin Valley Conference involved in multiple games over the weekend. You got, again, the Merrill Conference getting back into conference play next Tuesday. Really some interesting between now and when we get back together next Wednesday. We're going to find out a lot about these boys basketball teams, aren't we?
Well, yeah, because it's interesting when we're kind of going down on paper. Marshfield and Auburndale are 2 of the major teams that have played so far within the conference that we cover. I mean, I'm excited to kind of see how East does with McDonald and Mosinee and losing some of the bigs they have and relying on their guard play and just not a lot of returning starters in that lineup, with Rozwadowski being kind of the main returner. To see what West and Newman can do over at that tournament, I think will be interesting and kind of a lot of fun to see play. And I think those 2 tournaments are going to kind of be a neat deal and nice to see what teams are capable of doing on these early non-conference schedules. I mean, Pines and Newman are a really interesting battle because they're built the same. They have these senior classes they rely on, and they're strong. And then, again, you got the same thing kind of in the Merrill South, other than Assumption Newman. I'm trying to find looking at the schedules quick. A lot of these teams are
Merrill South. You got
they lay dormant till after the Thanksgiving break.
Basically, they're all.
And then they open up with conference play the following Tuesday.
Exactly. Basically, the Cranberry Classic and the Wausau West tournaments are. Everybody else in the Merrill South is laying low until next Tuesday. And again, I think one of the games of the week, in fact, it may be the game of the week, is that Auburndale Marathon game. Right. I mean, that's going to be it's always a battle. I mean, It seems like those teams meet 3 times a year, a couple of times in the regular season and often in the postseason. But Auburndale, I think, looking very strong. And Marathon with Grant Warren. Again, he is a matchup nightmare for anybody else. And I think they're going to lean on him a lot early, aren't they?
He's the height of the conference, and I think he's the type of player that has capabilities of controlling both ends of the floor offensively and defensively. So I think teams are going to have their hands full when they play Marathon. And I guess jumping back to the Valley, just hitting on Rapids one more time, going to just a game to face Cuba City. It would be a good matchup that we can look forward to seeing how that plays out. And then for the Valley, coming back after Thanksgiving break on November 29th, a lot of these teams.
They all play.
Yeah, they're all testing themselves against the Appleton East, the Memorials, the New Londons, Merrill's playing Lakeland, Neenah, all those teams.
Appleton East, Appleton
and getting themselves ready. So I think you have some good, the Valley showing that they're getting into our philosophy that we're going to talk about in a minute. Right. The Valley showing that how important some of these tournaments are over Thanksgiving break, continuing that non-conference stretch for another week after Thanksgiving is up, and then you've got vice versa where the Merrill would, where there's maybe two teams out of their 6 teams playing, 6 teams playing in the tournaments, and then everybody else opens up with conference play. One conference game, you jump into a crossover by the end of the week.
And before we talk about that philosophy and maybe go a little deeper into it, what about DC Everest? New head coach, one of the best players in the state, in Marcus Hall. I got the yearbook. He's right on the cover of it. So that's always a big, honor to be named one of the top seniors in the state of Wisconsin. But from what we've heard, Oliver Drake's got a good pedigree as a coach. DC Everest looks like quite a talented team back. They play over at the Oshkosh North event. They take on Kingdom Prep Lutheran on Friday. And then the whole school, Oshkosh North, on Saturday. And then next Tuesday, Everest on the road at Eau Claire Memorial. And I know last season Memorial was one of the more talented teams over in the western part of the state. What do you expect from DC Everest early?
Well, Marcus Hall's going to be a big target, and he's still going to get his looks. I mean, he showed last year you could come at him, and he'd still take you down. I thought one of the best elements that some people described, that watched him a lot more than I ever saw him play, was that his ability, as much as to score, he was finding ways to make the passes when the double came or when he wasn't given the angle he wanted, which just inherently he's going to draw so much attention. There's going to be openings and opportunities, and that's why I think that supporting cast stepping up and finding the next tier for the scoring and finding guys that are going to knock down the open jumper or finish strong at the basket is going to be a big deal for him. And that's why is it Connor Preeb? How do you say the shooter, the sophomore?
Right, yeah.
That's going to be a big deal if he can open it up from beyond the arc to spot up when Hall's going to get that. So again, there's new coach, maybe a little bit different system, coming in with a talent lineup of talent players, much as Hall. There's always things to think about and things to judge and guess at, but I like to think on paper with the way they're going to test themselves early on, you're going to see a lot in these. They got some good non-conference games right away to see where they stand, to see what they've got to do or fix if it's not working.
And the game against Memorial Tuesday is one I'm really curious to see because Memorial's got great size. They got a couple seniors, 1'6'7", 1'6'5". As the yearbook said, they lost 4 terrific seniors, but they're just reloading. I mean, they're restocking, and it's going to be an interesting matchup over at Memorial Tuesday night. I'm really curious to see how Everest does in that game.
And there are 3 games on the road, so that always is a little bit of another factor that you got to give in there. That we're going to go test ourselves out of our own home gym and like that comfort level that we talked about earlier, having home court advantage.
Yeah, about 4 minutes left. What's on your plate of topics? Because you always have. You said this year you're not going to have as many notes, but I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, you see my junky handwriting in front of me that I need my reading glasses.
What's the topic you want to kind of touch on?
I think the biggest thing is we talked to Coach DeBuhr about it, and I just think that factor is scheduling. I mean, I know I twisted it when I was a head coach. Sometimes we did it one way. Sometimes we tried it another. You've got that element of does somebody have an advantage by having a game before the other team does? So we already mentioned that where Northland Pines, they beat 3 Lakes by 40. So you wonder how much that is compared to a practice or scrimmage for them.
Right.
But is that a big deal having that first game in and then the other team's coming in with their first? Can you not adjust fast enough to having a game like atmosphere where the other team already knows or has a good idea of what it's all about? I mean, is that a factor? Is it like we talked about where a lot of these Valley teams, they've maybe played one game if they could. Only Marshfield did that, but other than that, they're starting off this Thanksgiving weekend, and then they load up with non-conference opponents in anticipation of their conference season. They do that every year. And then you have the Merrillwood, that there's teams that are playing early on, and there's other ones that they open up with a strong first conference game.
I think Marathon has some pride in the fact that they're usually the last team to play their first regular season game.
Right. I think that's a notch they like to keep.
But it works.
Right. So I don't know what the right recipe is. I always thought it was a big deal to match your opponent's first game, as I said earlier. I think that's a big deal. The debate comes in and challenging yourself in these non-conference games. I think coaches are ultimately looking for, when they get to analyze that game, for what they can pick up quickly during the game as it's going on live in front of them, is early on, what do I see as things that we're good on, we can keep building on, that we're strong with, and where are our deficiencies coming from? Because you look at this as a floor plan and laying the foundation for what you want totally built and stacked up and to have as ready as it possibly can when that new playoff season rolls around. And it's a kind of a difficult chess match and guessing game sometimes to figure all that out as you go on. And some of these coaches, brand new program, brand new players. Other ones have well-established veterans, kids that have been playing for super long. Mm-hmm. I think for us as fans and listeners and viewers, we want to see early on where some of these teams stack up in these tournaments. So,
and it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to have to ask our coach guests as they continue to come in during the season if, like Coach DeBuhr, their whole policy on their schedules has changed because of what we found out with the computer seedings last year. Because I think you were surprised. I was surprised. He was very open about exactly what he's thinking. That these coaches have realized what is important when it comes to those computers.
Which is fair enough.
And they're going
to
do what makes the most sense for them to make sure that they don't have to go on the road in what they feel is an unfair disadvantage.
Well, and now I think it's because, again, when we would try to play as strong a competition as we could. So we were battle tested and ready by playoff time. And that's why if we were Division 5, we wouldn't mind playing a Division 1 or Division 2 team just to load it up. And it looked better on paper at that point. Now you got a philosophy, there's two sides to it. Obviously, as you go farther in the playoffs, the games are going to get harder. So you want to be ready to go to, when you hit that roadblock, your team's going to be reactive and willing to be put forth that effort that's going to take to win. And now there's another philosophy in there. We need to get wins just to get to that point. So we'll take some wins where we can get it. We'll jump around divisions, and the computer really is not looking at that too much, and other teams are going to build up losses. Now it's almost a little more torn on what is the philosophy. Do you build up the wins? Do you battle test yourself? Are you going to get not in the right position that you need to put your team? So I think it's almost going to be so individualized now on what we get from the responses as coaches. But I think that's a good idea to make that a mandatory question. Like, what do you think about scheduling? What's your philosophy on it now?
Well, that's going to wrap up this week. Again, thanks to our guests, Coach Mike DeBuhr from Merrill and also Vince Hanz from Wausau West. We'll be back again next week, 6 to 8 p.m. More action to talk about.
And you got to get out. There's so much going on. You got to get, if you're a high school sports fan in any way, shape, or form, you got to go out and watch some stuff.
Absolutely. Take your radio with you. You can listen to me a lot this weekend. I could have 5 games this weekend.
Right.